Hello and welcome back to Hadoop Exam Learning Resources. In this session, we will cover the anti-corruption layer. How do you integrate between two bounded contexts? That is what you can use an anti-corruption layer to do that. So once you have defined your bounded context, your responsibility to maintain the purity and bounded context going forward. So basically purity in the sense you don't want your some business logic is leaking from this domain context to this domain context. That should be avoided. So that is what one of the things which can help you is the anti-corruption layer. We have discussed like there are 6-7 different patterns to do this, so we'll discuss anti-corruption layer in detail. Basically this can be achieved using anti-corruption layer, like this linking of the business logic across the bounded context. Each bounded context represents a unique domain concept. We have discussed, correct. uh, Next is there is a situation, some concept in one bounded context are represented as differently with respect to another bounded context. I'll come back, we have already discussed, but I'll explain you here. And we should avoid translating them to make appear same across bounded context. For example, in one context you are saying the unit you are using is a dollar, correct, for some amount, and in another context you are using INR, Indian National Rupee. So basically you should avoid translating this unit to this unit while working this when you transfer your object from one bounded context to another object. Avoid this. Otherwise if you change like dollar to INR to dollar, then while transforming it means you are leaking the business logic from this domain to this domain, which should be strictly avoided, because if you do this it causes one bounded context bleed to another. For example, in the below diagram, if you see here customer, you may try to create a single object that represent a customer object with detail like this. So for example, this is my let's say first one is a reservation, correct, reservation context here, and another is an order context. Let's say this is not customer context, this is an order context, for example, correct. And now what we are saying it, when you put an order basically, and you need customer object in both the case, correct, here customer object and here customer object. But in case of online delivery, if you have to do so, this is address is a uh, basically compulsory thing. Without that you can't do this. But when you are in the reservation, when you're making it, so customer is coming to your restaurant, so you don't need the address, you need a phone number. When first he to like to compliment or something, to give priority something, so we need to know when first this guy has reserved in this restaurant, what is his name, basically, correct. So these three attributes are same, but the address is not there, not required here. So what we have to do basically, anti-corruption layer, what it does is, so when the object is transferred from this to this and this to this, then what it does, when object come here, it would strip out this address information and then pass this object here, so that you don't pass here as an address, because you don't need it, you don't leak this information to this context. So that is what you need to remember, like whenever you make it pure, whatever object you're transferring, then so who would do this translation, you would create intermediate access anti-corruption layer, which would strip out this information when this goes from here to here, basically, correct. This arrow is not right, let's say it will be like this, correct. So this way, when an object goes from this context to this context, so same thing I have written here, like, and we in this way everywhere. So if we use this customer object everywhere as it is, then there would be a tight coupling, which we want to avoid it. Whatever needed for this domain context, give it them only that information. Now so the same thing which we have discussed, so like unnecessarily we should not pass it. So using anti-corruption layer we can do this. Now moving further on the what access control, sorry, not access control list, this is anti-corruption layer. What it can do, it takes whatever the customer context representation is this, correct. So it would, what it does, it would get this object and translates its representation which is unique to reservation context, and that is done by stripping out the additional information or adding the more information, both the case whatever it is needed. So this is the responsibility of this anti-corruption layer. Hence reservation context only deals with the pure representation it cares about. It does not care about the address and everything which is not needed, and that prevents bounded context leaking from each other. Imagine in above ACL, if we have caching layer in customer context is there in that caching layer, and somehow customer context is not available, even though reservation context can work with the cached version of the customer context. Coupling, if we always treat a concept, for example customer, exactly same across different bounded contexts, we may introduce a coupling between contexts in our system. This can create a tight coupling, because unnecessary information you're passing in, and by chance somebody used that address which is not needed, and sometimes you decided not to pass. So this all create a mess in your software, so you should avoid this. So we can prevent on bounded context from leaking by using anti-corruption layer. We implement ACL or anti-corruption layer using abstract interface. You need to define an interface, and then actual implementation you would use in your bounded context, correct? So you should sorry, in your bounded context you would have an interface defined, and you would use the interface, and actual implementation would be in ACL. ACL implements can do the necessary translation. Let me discuss about this. And this is generally a infrastructure component which does this translation. When we talk about the hexagon uh, architecture, correct, which is based on the mostly on this domain driven design, this would be this is itself is a huge subject in itself, so we may not be covering here as part of DDD, but this would maybe in future we will create a training out of this hexagon architecture as part of our architecture series. So that is where this infrastructure layer, application layer, presentation layer, that you would understand. That is not entire architecture which you have been thinking till now, but this is altogether different, and how this can be used using port and adapter, etc. You can use it here. So implement ACL with the legacy system. You can use a anti-corruption layer for the legacy system. In your legacy system, nobody had thought for bounded context. When you work with the legacy system, nobody have designed using the domain driven design, correct? So how would you implement pure bounded context? So in this case, anti-corruption layer can helpful for this. Anti-corruption layer can help you to take to keep your bounded context pure. As we discussed, it should be designed such a way that your new system can deal with the legacy system as well, correct? So that is what we have discussed. So now this is anti-corruption layer to integrate between the various bounded contexts. How do you integrate it, and how can you avoid the additional information, or to pass or remove kind of thing using this? So by doing this session, we are done with the strategic design pattern. So we have a strategic tool which we have discussed here. So let me go over this slide. So this is what basically your domain driven design artifact. So once you are done with your strategic tools analysis with your domain expert, you must have an output as a ubiquitous language created. Your bounded context, you should already find it, and what are the context map you are going to use it, what are my how I would integrate it. So this is what a strategic tool would cover. So that is what the this is a bigger picture you would when you start your project. Now we would move to the tactical tools, which is the actual implementation. This would go to the till code level of this. So we'll discuss the various aspect of this tactical tool is a little bigger than strategic tool, so but we'll discuss each thing in the detail while discussing the tactical tools. So that's all. Thanks for watching. I'm stopping now. I hope you like this session. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe it.